In this video, we are going to talk about history of wine part 1. So before starting this video, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. Wine has been produced for thousands of years, with evidence of ancient wine production reaching back to approximately 6000 BC in Georgia, the oldest known traces of wine, around 5000 BC in West Azerbaijan region of Iran, around 4100 BC in Armenia, large-scale production, and around 4000 BC in Sicily. Ancient China unearthed the first evidence of a fermented drink made from grapes and rice, about 700 BC. Since its origins, wine's altered state of consciousness has been viewed as religious. The Greeks worshipped Dionysus or Bacchus, and the Romans kept his cult alive. Consumption of ceremonial wine, most likely a sweet wine at the time, was part of Jewish practice from biblical times and became much more prominent in the Christian Church. Despite the fact that Islam forbade the production or use of wine, alchemists such as Geber pioneered its distillation for medicinal and commercial purposes, such as the synthesis of perfume during its golden age. Wine production and consumption increased as Europe expanded, reaching a high in the 15th century. Despite the terrible phylloxera loss invasion of 1887, modern science and technology adapted, and industrial wine production and consumption are now widespread. Here's an introduction to the history of wine. Wine is a beverage that has been appreciated by humans since the beginning of time because of its exquisite flavor and pleasing effects. This beverage has a delicious taste, various health advantages, and, last but not least, a psychoactive, that is, intoxicating, influence, all of which add to our intrinsic liking for it. Additionally, this beverage has an impact that may be described as intoxicating. There is not a single beverage with an alcoholic content that even comes close to matching the impact that alcohol has had on culture. The movement of philosophical and theological ideas from one part of Europe to another was facilitated by the trade of wines between various civilizations, which served as a conduit for the transfer of these ideas. The Bible has several allusions to wine, starting with Noah and his vineyard and continuing all the way up to Jesus, who many people believe to be the finest winemaker who has ever lived. These references may be found throughout the Bible. Number 1. When was wine first created? There is no way to determine for definite who was the first person to find wine. However, there is an ancient myth that originates from Persia that attributes the discovery to a woman. According to the legend, she was a princess in Persepolis who had managed to flee the city despite having lost the king's favor due to her disobedience. She felt such an overwhelming feeling of shame that she made the decision to end her life by committing suicide by swallowing the juice of some table grapes that had spoiled in their container. She did this so that she might escape the embarrassment she felt. The suicide attempt she made did not proceed as she had planned. Rather of entering a state of eternal slumber, she grew elated, then became intoxicated, and ultimately passed out. She came to the conclusion that when she awoke, none of the issues that had been bothering her before seemed to be there in her life. She informed the king of her finding, and the monarch was so captivated with the fermented grape drink that she was rehabilitated in his good graces as a direct consequence of her bringing it to his notice. She was also rewarded with a title. The city of Shiraz, which is situated in close proximity to the location where this story takes place, emerged as a significant hub for the production of wine in Iran. Even though this is a sweet tale, the accidental discovery of wine most likely occurred more than time in a number of different places. This is the most plausible scenario. On the other hand, one thing that can be asserted with absolute certainty is that the discovery of wine was the consequence of utterly and completely random chance. Number 2. 60-million-year-old fossils. Since the earliest evidence of chemicals similar to wine has been found in fossils that are 60 million years old, this suggests that our pre-human predecessors may have arrived to the conclusion that older grapes were more desired. In the present day, we may also notice this with our animal companions, who often choose more mature food. The archaeological site of Haji Firas Tepe, located in the northern Zagros mountains of Iran, is where the oldest remains of wine in the form that we know it today were found. The site belonged to the Neolithic era of human history, 8500 to 4000 BC. According to the results of carbon dating, the wine dated back to between 5400 and 5000 BC. It is believed that the art of making wine began not long after 6000 BC, when humans created the first permanent settlements through the domestication of animals and plants. Although wine dating any earlier than this has yet to be found, it is thought that wine dating any earlier than this will eventually be found. This manner of life was far more secure than the nomadic way of life that the vast majority of humanity practiced at the time, which was the norm among them. Because of this stability, people were able to experiment with different foods and beverages. During this historical period, a number of our most beloved meals and beverages, including beer and, of course, wine, which we continue to enjoy to this day, were invented. Number 3. Wine and the ancient Egyptians. Now let's fast forward a few thousand years to the pre-dynastic period of the Egyptian pharaohs, which was at the time when wine was becoming popular all across the ancient world. The fact that hieroglyphics from this time period reveal that the pharaohs didn't appear to care all that much about the quality of the alcohol, but rather the amount, suggests that excessive drinking may not be as big of an issue as it is now. On the other hand, the wine that the ancient Egyptians drank was only a distant relative of the wine that is consumed today. They used grapes of various colors, including white, pink, green, red, and dark blue, in addition to figs, palm, dates, and pomegranates. You can probably imagine that the flavor would not have been at all like what we anticipate a glass of wine to taste like in this day and age. The process of making wine from other fruits than grapes is largely identical to the process of making wine from grapes, with the exception that sugar is added to assist the fermentation process. The Egyptians made use of trellises, which provided shade from the sun, which is necessary in Egypt due to the light being so powerful there, and they were also aware that the last 100 days before the harvest were the most important. After the grapes were picked, they were transported to a sizable vat where they would be pressed. Instead of using a stone press to smash the seeds and stems of the grapes, the Egyptians pressed the grapes by treading on them, which added a bitter flavor to the wine that was produced. After that, another pressing of the wine took place in an elongated slough made of linen. This fabric was stretched over a sturdy wooden frame as 5 men worked to keep the priceless wine from spilling. 4 of the guys worked on one side of the frame, stretching the linen, while the 5th man watched the other side. Wine was produced in Egypt at multiple quality levels, including free-run must. Very little of this was gathered, but it was a wine that was very fruity and lasted for a very long time. First wine must. This was produced by treading the grapes and accounted for around 2/3 of the juice. Second run must. This was made possible by the extra pressing. The grape juice that is stored in the barrel or vat before it is fermented and transformed into wine is called must. Different types of wine might be created by combining wine from these 3 classes, e.g. red, white, dry, or sweet. They were then placed in a trough to undergo the process of fermentation.